So I started following the race just through social media. I kind of found it with my sister, and we just started following the race for a few years. They kind of put out something that was like, if you'd like to do this, come to this meeting. It's okay if you've never rowed before. Let's just see what's happening in this meeting. And we left it, and they kind of told us, like, if there's any part of you that like feels some sort of spark, like some sort of interest in this, you should do it. My sister Jen rowed in college. I never rowed, but she reached out to her college rowing teammate Sierra, and who was immediately like, let's do this. You're right, we should do this. And then through the race itself, we connected with our fourth teammate, Kelsey, who's our skipper. Our boat is a Hericane, an R45, so 4.5 meters long. It took a while to actually have the boat in our hands. So kind of in the background of the boat itself is when we're doing everything else to get ready too. We worked really hard through our training with a coach to help us mentally prepare. He was an endurance coach who kind of took on our team because most of us have no experience doing endurance competitions or anything. So being mentally prepared was huge, and part of that was talking as a team and recognizing what are your fears. And spending so much time training with our team and living together in person, you learn to trust each other. Early on, we knew that Kelsey was going to be our skipper. She's the person on our team with an incredible amount of leadership experience. She has 10 years as a whitewater rafting guide. Once we got our boat on the water and we could practice being together on the water and rowing and going through the motions of what a day is going to look like, what the shift schedule is going to look like, that's when we kind of started to figure out what everyone else's roles was going to be. So Kelsey in the stern cabin, that's where all of our electronic systems are. So she, as the skipper, was up there, and Jen was up there as well. So the two of them kind of took on the leadership roles in the boat. Myself and Sierra were in the bow cabin. So the bow cabin is a little bit bigger, and it's where we store all of our gear. Their role is kind of to take care of the boat and make sure we're going where we need to go. And our role was more to take care of the team and make sure that everybody has what they need. We kind of naturally fell into these roles once we realized what the needs were. People could kind of say, okay, I can take on that job, I can take on that job.
Hey Kelsey, what do your hands look like?
Look at how big that blister is.
Ouch. I got some little baby ones. Kristen, how are your hands?
Not too bad.
End of day one.
This is preventative. I'm gonna take this off today. Our official launch date was June 8th. So we had 9 teams from around the US, from around the world, that were at the starting line for a week and a half before the race started. So everybody was here with their boats. Leaving Monterey was so special on its own because we had so many friends and family there. And because we were based in Monterey, and a big role that we had here was kind of connecting with the community as much as we could, we had a lot of people at the starting line cheering us on, which was really emotional. And then on top of that, the paddling club Hi'ilanio Kick High, they had all of their canoes in the water, and they followed us and just surrounded us, and that was really special. That first day was really special. We chose to kind of leave Monterey following the Monterey Canyon, and because we went that direction, I think that's why we saw so many whales. So for the first 36 hours, we were surrounded by whales, by humpback whales, and there was one family of humpback whales that was following us. So having like this kind of be our entrance to this, our first day, was really magical to be surrounded by whales. We had a lot of birds that kept us company throughout the entire crossing, which I know that birds can fly across the ocean and live out there, but it surprised me. And then when we got close to Hawaii, about a week away, that's when we started getting flying fish, which was really fun. I loved the fish. They would just jump into the boat and you'd have to rescue them and like throw them out, but sometimes they'd just like hit you in the face in the middle of the night.
This may look gross to you, but it is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life. It is dried noodles, and as you can see, there's goldfish inside of it.
We're required to bring 55 days of food. Having that much food in the boat and laying it out and looking at it is kind of wild to see.
I've got beef taco filling, mashed potatoes, and some green hot sauce.
When we first left, that was the first time we were rowing with like a fully loaded boat, because through training we had some water on board and emergency supplies and some weights at some point, but very empty. So when you're rowing this fully loaded boat, you can feel how much heavier it is. Before we stepped out of our cabin every day, we had a code of ethics that we would look at, that we wrote together as a team, that just kind of reminded us that it's okay to be scared, but you don't want to let your emotions impact how you respond to things. In the beginning, getting away from the continental shelf, away from California for the first few hundred miles, there's a current that's just pushing you south. So we don't want to go south because that's just going to take us to Mexico. We want to go west. So the first 400 miles, we're working really hard to fight through this current. So you have a lot of beam seas, a lot of waves that are coming in from the side of your boat. Instead of helping you push your boat in the direction you want, it's pushing you sideways.
So day 6. And we've been pushing to kind of get to a point where we don't pair anchor. I know, it sounds like a cannon every single time a wave hits this hull. It's just whack.
During the day, we would row 3 up, and everyone would row for 90 minutes, and then you'd have a 30-minute break. And we would do that during the day for about 10 hours, and then at night, we would change to 2 people rowing and 2 people resting for 2-hour shifts. So you'd row for 2 hours, but then you would have 2 hours off the oars to rest. And you're not necessarily resting for 2 hours. I don't think anyone ever got a full 2 hours of sleep. I think the most anyone ever got was maybe 90 minutes for 1 or 2 shifts at night, because there's a lot of other things you have to do in your time off, like eating your food, wiping all the salt water off, changing your clothes, any repairs that need done to your gear or to the boat, navigating, communications, all of that has to happen in your time off.
One of the main roles that we have in this cabin here when you are not on deck is you're watching this chart plotter. You're watching to see if there are other boats nearby. You are listening to the radio to see if anybody calls you, and if someone on deck sees a boat, it's your job to radio them just to make sure that they see you as well.
One of the reasons you spread out the roles so much is that way nobody has too much work that they're doing in their off shifts and isn't getting chances to sleep. But I think throughout the crossing, everybody averaged like 3 or 4 hours of sleep a day throughout.
I was really productive today. There was some water in the bow hatch, and Chris got it out, because that's the worst, is to just scoop out bilge water. I got in with some sealant, so hopefully that'll help with the water buildup over time, so we don't have to do it over and over again, but you never know.
They told us to be ready for the first week was going to be the hardest, because you're still adjusting to this sleep schedule and everything is new and you have adrenaline. But after that week, you do just kind of get used to it, and you get really good at falling asleep really fast because you're very tired, and you get pretty good at waking up.
That's a great point. don't get ocean water in your fresh water. Tastes nasty.
A lot of the issues kind of all happened in that first week as well. We knew that there was going to be a storm system coming from day 1, so we kind of chose to start by rowing north and getting out a little bit higher, just to try to avoid the worst of the storm. About a week in was when we hit storm conditions with waves that were 15 to 20 feet high.
So the boat capsized. We had been surfing some pretty big waves.
We did capsize one time. My sister Jen and I were rowing, but Sierra and Kelsey were in the cabins resting.
Got to a certain point where you had this realization of this boat's not going down, it's gonna fully flip. And by the time I realized that, you're submerged underwater.
And I know Kelsey hamster wheeled a little bit. Once it was upside down, you can kind of help from the inside to ride it. But Sierra, I know, was sleeping, and she kind of just woke up on the ceiling.
By the time it went upright, we just kind of looked at each other like, are you okay? I'm okay. Yes, I'm okay. Kelsey opens the door. Is everybody okay? Yes, we're okay. Just doing a quick check of everybody and then doing an assessment of what had happened.
It's something we had trained for, and we knew, like, whether we were in the cabin or we were rowing, how we should respond to it. And everybody did what they were supposed to do. And we had pretty minimal damage to the boat. We just lost a few items, like a speaker and some shoes.
Then we lost our EPIRB as well, our emergency beacon. That one I felt really bad about because when the emergency beacon dropped, it actually sent an alert to the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard sent an alert to the contacts associated with the EPIRB, which in this case were World's Toughest Row and Kelsey's parents. I got a quick change of clothes and was calling World's Toughest Row, the duty officer there, and as I called them, they were like, oh, thank goodness you called. We heard from the Coast Guard that you guys had, that your beacon had gone off. So luckily nothing was actually wrong with us.
We just officially crossed the halfway mark. It's time to party.
Throughout the crossing, little things would happen with our navigation system. The auto helm itself and the compass would stop talking to each other. And so we lose our navigation ability for a little bit. We'd have to hand steer while we gave it time to reset. Kelsey, our skipper, is incredibly knowledgeable and prepared for everything.
In wilderness medicine, they say step 1, always smoke a cigarette. And what they really mean by that is take a second and think and breathe. But I take things literally. So step 1 to fixing the autopilot.
That we had one system fail, and we weren't able to change out the parts. They'd kind of seized up from the heat of just using it for a month. We weren't able to change out the parts, and she, through her knowledge, was able to kind of Frankenstein these two systems together and create a working autopilot that we could use for the final few weeks of our crossing.
It's alive!
If we hadn't been able to do that, then we would have been hand steering for the rest of the crossing, which we had prepared to do. We knew it's something we could do, but it's not something we wanted to do because it would mean a lot more work mentally and physically for the whole team.
We're getting so close. We have 158 miles to go. And then once we pass Oahu, we are on our way to Hanalei Bay in Kauai. I don't know how close we need to be to shore in order to see it, but you know, it's coming up in the next couple days. So far we've been going about 60 to 70 miles a day. So we're looking at just over 2 days away before we cross that finish line and step on land for the first time in 40 days.
I think it was 2 days before we actually made it to land that we started to see land. As we were coming into Kauai, we were 35 miles out when we started to see land. Being able to see land and see that you've actually done this thing and it's right there and you're almost done is incredible. So having that kind of re-energizes you and you're like, okay, this is the final push. Just give it everything you've got. 3 miles away from land, we could smell land. And that was another incredible memory of just when you haven't smelled anything new for 40 days and then you smell land. Days, 22 hours and 14 minutes was our official time when we got to land. We were ready to just see our family, and so we went as hard as we could. We made it at 4 a.m. So we were one of the few teams that got there in the middle of the night, and waiting for us was our close family that had flown out to see us. And getting to land, taking our first few steps onto land, and then just having your family there waiting for you was an incredible way to finish a crossing like this, to just immediately have people you care about waiting for you and telling you congratulations, and then helping you walk back up to the finish line. Yeah. The first thing they do after all of that is they sit you down at a table with a bunch of food, and it was so nice to just have food waiting for you. It's been a month now since we've been on land, and you go through such a wave of emotions from something like this, and I know getting off the boat, they asked us, would you do this again? And I think all of us said, yes, we would do this again. And I think a month away now, even with some distance from it, I think we all still would do this again or something big like this. So I know that everybody on this team is going to continue to challenge themselves to do big things now that we know that we can. Like, once you row an ocean, how do you not do something else big after that? So. I don't know what's next for a lot of us, but I'm excited to see what everyone chooses to do after this. And I'm excited to support everybody in everything they choose after this.
Okay, all right. Buddies.
Okay. Say maybe a hurricane rowing on 3, 2, 3.
Hericane rowing!